Syria was once part of the Turkish-controlled Ottoman Empire, an empire that many people believe Turkish President Recep Tayyip Erdogan would gladly revive. Presently, however, Turkey's Syrian policy has turned on Erdogan's ambition to consolidate his one-man rule at home, and at the same time to protect the country's southern borders from a potential Kurdish threat. According to some analysts, after Erdogan's political party AKP was defeated in the Istanbul re-election in June this year, and after the slowdown of Turkey's economy, it is now estimated that the AKP's core voter base has been reduced to around 30%. Turkey's invasion of the Kurdish province of Afrin in northwestern Syria in January 2018 was supported by the West majority of the Turkish electorate. And now Erdogan sees a new incursion east of the Euphrates as an opportunity to regain popular support. Originally, Turkish involvement in the Syrian civil war was prompted by a desire to use the Free Syrian Army as well as various Islamist groups to topple the Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. However, the intervention of Russia and Iran made that objective untenable. In the meantime, the success of a quasi-autonomous Kurdish state along the Syrian-Turkish border forced Ankara to revise its objectives to focus on keeping the Kurdish guerrilla groups as far from Turkish borders as possible. At this point, Turkey's long-term goal is to create a wide strip of the northern Syrian border which will become a safe zone where Syrian Sunni Arab refugees can return and replace the local Kurdish population. It would get rid of millions of Syrian refugees who have made their way to Turkey over the years, where they have now become a burden for Erdogan. Ankara is determined to establish a 30-kilometer wide buffer zone along its Syrian border, apparently between the Tigris and Euphrates and beyond, as it wants to settle Arab populations in those areas. At the same time, Turkey aims to disperse Kurdish militias linked with the outlawed Kurdistan Workers' Party and dismantle their structures. Turkish troops and Turkish-backed militia already control Afrin province, a predominantly Kurdish region, as well as the area along the Turkish-Syrian border, extending to the western bank of the Euphrates across the river from Jarablus and south to Abu al-Zandin. Turkey-backed rebels still hold most parts of Idlib province, and the Kremlin prevents the Syrian Arab army from starting a large military offensive in that area, even though both Russia and Syria conduct airstrikes against supposedly militants on a daily basis. Power in Idlib mostly rests with a jihadi faction known as Tahrir al-Sham. It has roots in Al-Qaeda and is internationally designated as a terrorist group, but Turkey nonetheless maintains ties to the organization and is using it as a proxy. Turkish soldiers have set up a dozen military outposts inside the Idlib enclave, one of several Turkish military incursions into this corner of Syria over the past few years, and they also work closely with Tahrir al-Sham's local rivals. Russia, on the other hand, is greatly irritated by Turkish protection for Tahrir al-Sham, which collaborates with Chechen and Central Asian extremists. Moscow blames the group for drone attacks on the Russian Air Force base in western Syria. Still, Russian leaders seem keen to avoid a head-on confrontation with Turkey over the fate of Idlib, at least for the time being. Turkey is extremely concerned that a Syrian Arab army's military offensive in Idlib would create a humanitarian catastrophe which may lead to the flow of millions of refugees to its border. Hosting millions of Syrians has already cost Turkey a lot, and such a move may have the potential to create social and political unrest in Turkey, which is already experiencing economic instability due to currency fluctuations and foreign currency rates against the Turkish lira. Moscow's and Ankara's geopolitical aspirations are largely incompatible. Between the 17th and 20th centuries, the Ottoman and Russian empires were deadly rivals. Until the collapse of the Russian Empire in 1917, Turks and Russians fought 17 major wars, which the Turks overall lost. 4 years ago, the two countries were on the edge of another military confrontation, at least according to the Kremlin propagandists. After a Turkish jet shot down a Russian Sukhoi Su-24 near the Syrian-Turkey border in November 2015, Russia vowed a harsh response. Apart from imposing a ban on the import of Turkish tomatoes, nothing significantly happened. Shortly after the incident, Moscow and Ankara signed the intergovernmental agreement for the construction of the Turkish Stream pipeline, fully funded by Russia's state-owned Gazprom company. The Kremlin easily overcame the Turkish downing of a Russian jet. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov said that Moscow will not initiate a war as a result of the event, which was seen as another humiliation of Russia in the global arena. Ever since, the two countries appear to have good relations, at least on the surface. In 2017, Turkey declared it would buy Russia's S-400 missile defense system, which raised questions concerning Turkey's alliance with the North Atlantic Treaty Organization, NATO, and the country's future intentions. The State Department and the Pentagon warned Ankara of repercussions, including cancelling the delivery of at least 100 US-made F-35 fighter jets purchased by Turkey, as well as ending participation of the Turkish defense industry in producing components for the aircraft. However, it is interesting that the United States never threatened Russia with regards to the S-400 delivery to Turkey. On the other hand, in 2010, Russia refused to sell the S-300 to Iran. This time there was no such pressure, which means that Turkey's decision to buy Russia's missile defense system represents no serious threat to the US geopolitical interests. Turkey has the second largest military in NATO and is home to Incirlik Base, a major overseas post Washington uses to carry out strikes against its opponents. In addition, bordering Iran, Iraq, Syria and Russia across the Black Sea, Turkey provides strategic real estate for the United States. Therefore, Turkey remains a critical country for American interests, despite the cooperation between Turkey and Russia. Even though the deterioration of relations with the US is hitting Ankara hard, in the long term, Turkey will likely remain a part of the wider West, which is a term used by Zbigniew Brzezinski, one of America's leading 20th century strategic thinkers. In order to have the Syrian conflict resolved, Turkey will have to keep cooperating not only with Russia but with the US as well, regardless of the fact that most of the American troops will abandon Syria. Since 2017, leaders of Russia, Iran and Turkey held numerous summits on Syria, but in spite of that, the war still goes on. In the past 100 years, all major conflicts were resolved by signing peace treaties in the West, not in Astana, Sochi or Istanbul. Therefore, it is unlikely that the three countries will be able to ensure permanent peace in Syria, and the United States will likely play a significant role. That's all for today guys, thanks for watching.
بالفيديو والاشتراك بالقناة وتفعيل زر الجرس ليصلك كل جديد. دعمك لنا يجعلنا نستمر ونقدم ما هو أفضل وأعظم. قل